Good morning, Planet Earth. This is Robert Phoenix with another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame, broadcasted to you live from South Central Texas. Getting it to you as early as I can on this day. What is happening out there in the land of chaos, the realm of confusion, disruption, disorder, ab ordo chow. Yes, indeed, we are living through amazing, interesting, strange, bizarre, monstrous, horrific, biblical, revelatory times. It's all there. Before we get started today, though, let me just reiterate my position on the Super Bowl. I've watched Super Bowls since I was 11 years old, 10 years old. First Super Bowl I actually really watched was between the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Colts, won on a field goal by a wide receiver named Jim O'Brien. A very strange Super Bowl. It was not very exciting, but the prospect of me sitting down in my living room by myself, watching the entire game by myself at the age of 10, well, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. So I've seen Super Bowls, and I know when Super Bowls are fixed, and the majority of them are fixed. I've had this ongoing kind of debate with Patrick over on my website. I love Patrick. He's such a bright guy and such an independent, creative thinker. We differ a little bit on this Super Bowl, though. And I just want to set it straight. If you go back to the Super Bowl with the Patriots, like last year with the Panthers and the Broncos, Peyton Manning's last game, okay, yeah, could be fixed. Cam Newton was horrible. Why was he horrible? Did somebody set him down and basically say, you're going to throw this game? Did he go to a Baphomet party the night before? Did he have to eat excrement off of a donkey's rear? You know these stories, right? About look up Satanism in Hollywood on YouTube, and you'll go down a nasty rabbit hole. But Cam Newton did not play great. He seemed out of it, dazed, confused, whatever kind of Jedi mind trick they played on him. It worked. If there was no Jedi mind trick, it was Cam Newton having a bad game. That game is not really all that fixed last year. At least not on the surface. You go back to the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Seahawks, and to me, there was a total level of collusion there with both teams. Pete Carroll is a very interesting character. Pete Carroll is probably the most kind of new age esoteric coach ever been in the game, not named Phil Jackson. But Pete might even be more out there than Phil Jackson. Pete Carroll is also a 9/11 truther. Bill Belichick has a very long and storied history with the military. I believe he has a pretty strong connection with Bobby Knight. And Bobby Knight coached at Army, and later at University of Indiana. So Belichick's got this military thing going on. You've got Pete Carroll, the sort of the occult, esoteric, 9/11 truther, outsider, insider. So if you look at that Super Bowl that they played, all Pete Carroll has to do, all Darrell Bevell has to do, is call a couple of runs from Marshawn Lynch down by the goal line. They win that game. Everybody asks, why didn't you call the run? Why didn't you call the run? Why didn't you call the run? Instead, they throw a pass, and Belichick almost knows that the play is coming, sends his guy, Malcolm Butler, in to break up the play, borderline interference. The Patriots are always on the edge, always borderline. So are the Seahawks. Every team in the NFL now plays until it gets caught. Some teams are allowed to play dirtier, nastier, edgier than others, just the way it is. And the Patriots happen to be one of them. But when that play happened in the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman nonchalantly kind of walked off the field, and they were kind of laughing. And it was discovered by one of the backup defensive linemen of the Seahawks. He saw them kind of laughing and shaking hands. And they saw him seeing them. And it was strange because all of a sudden they changed their tone and their attitude. They were solemn. I was like, oh, we lost the Super Bowl. When the Detroit Lions played the Seattle Seahawks, again another Seahawk game in Pontiac, Michigan, and the Steelers had Jerome Bettis playing fullback for them or running back. It was one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. Most people to this day know that Super Bowl was totally thrown and tilted in favor of the Steelers. Feel a good story for Jerome Bettis. I guess the league needs a narrative. You go back to the Super Bowl between Harbaugh and Harbaugh, the Civil War down in New Orleans, the Battle of New Orleans. Remember when the power went off right after Beyonce's electrifying occult ritual to Baal? And that game was a blowout. It was headed towards Blowout-ville. And slowly but surely, the Niners kept coming back. But again, there are instances where players were being held conspicuously. Penalties weren't called, mostly on the Niners. They allowed them to get back in the game, but I guess the narrative was don't let them win. Don't let them win. It was the Ravens' time. So I see, and I've looked through a number of Super Bowls through this lens. And I would agree with Patrick that almost all of them are fixed. Now, let's turn our attention to this Super Bowl where the Atlanta Falcons got off to a scorching lead. One of the things that the Atlanta Falcons did as they got out to that scorching lead is they ran the football. They ran the football with really great efficiency, tearing up turf. Patriots couldn't keep up with them. So at halftime, Matt Ryan and Kyle Shanahan, who's the offensive coordinator, go to an up-tempo, pass-heavy offense. Completely change the game plan. Now, is Kyle Shanahan in on the fix? Did he get a call from the league? Said, Kyle, you're going to go to a pass-heavy offense. Bill's going to do this and do that, and this is how we're going to play the second half. Does that happen? Does that happen? I wouldn't say it couldn't happen, but I'm not sure it did happen. Case in point, the Patriots fired their defensive coordinator, Richard Smith, today. Why? Because they couldn't stop the Patriots. Now, if the fix was in, and they knew the fix was in, then why would they fire the defensive coordinator? Because they need a scapegoat? Is that it? They can't fire Kyle Shanahan because he's leaving. He's going to be the coach of the San Francisco 49ers. I think what happened was that the league wanted the Patriots to get back into the game. They don't like blowouts. They had a blowout with the Super Bowl in New York with Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning, Seahawks, Broncos. That was a blowout. That's the last blowout that we've had in the Super Bowl. You'd have to go pretty far back to find another blowout, because most of the games in the modern Super Bowl era have been close. Before that, you'd have to go back to the 2002 Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Oakland Raiders. And the reason why that was a blowout was because the Buccaneers knew all the Raiders' plays. John Gruden was the coach of the Buccaneers, and he had coached the Raiders, and the head coach of the Raiders had not changed the plays. They knew it was coming. That was a blowout. But before that, again, you have to go back a ways to find more blowouts. They're not common in the modern Super Bowl era. You'd have to go back to the Cowboys Super Bowls back in the 90s where they were just torching Buffalo every year. So I think the league wanted a close game. They wanted the ratings. They wanted to keep people around. They wanted to keep their eyeballs. I think they tried to get the Patriots back in the game in the second quarter. I'm not disagreeing with Patrick around this, okay? I'm not. There's an element here where the game was tilted. Now, there are a couple of variables in the Super Bowl. One, at first and 21, or first and 10 on the 21-yard line, Kyle Shanahan calls 3 pass plays, and one of the pass plays is a disaster, and one of them is a hole, and they get pushed backwards. All they need to do at that point in the game It's late in the fourth quarter, run the ball 3 times, kick the field goal, good chance, very good chance. Patriots lose. The play where Julian Edelman makes an outstanding catch, Robert Alford almost intercepts it. Edelman makes a catch. You can't script the catch. Sorry. Replay show. And I wanted to see that ball hit the turf. I really did. I actually wanted the Falcons to win the game. I wanted the Falcons to win because I wanted to see Bill Belichick. And I wanted it to be a blowout. And it was headed in that direction. I wanted to see Bill Belichick in front of a microphone, behind a microphone, deal with a blowout. I just wanted to see it. Didn't happen. Tom Brady has to make all those passes. He has to throw the ball, and those guys have to catch it. It wasn't as if they were running the ball every single play. No, these plays were pass plays, and they were getting big chunk yardage. If Brady does not throw the ball on the dime, those catches don't happen. Those are not automatic plays. Is he good enough to make them? Absolutely. All the big money in the game was on the Patriots. Vegas takes a loss if the Patriots win. Guess what happened? The Patriots won. Arthur Blank, arguably an incredibly powerful man. He owns the Atlanta Falcons. He used to be the owner of Home Depot. Home Depot has provided equipment, scads of equipment, to Israel for years. When they go in and they tear down a settlement and build their own settlements, most of the time they've been using Home Depot equipment. True case, true story. So Arthur Blank's on the inside, right? He's got connections. He's got pull. Apparently doesn't have enough with his Bob Kraft. You look at Arthur Blank in the sidelines, and he's like Mr. Hangdog. Yeah. A couple of quarters before, he was getting out his dance moves. Anyway, I do think that there was influence in the game. I think the Falcons still could have won. And that's where I'm going to end this discussion. When we talk about football, we talk about masculine energy, and we talk about the warrior, the virile warrior who's able to overcome great odds by using the force of his will and strength and the power of others to combine together and have an experience that is keeps texting me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So sorry, I get distracted sometimes. I should just turn my phone off. I might just do that. Does Alex Jones have his phone on when he does this stuff? No. Doesn't happen. I was on a good riff there, wasn't I? Anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about here in the last 15 minutes of the show, this notion of where we are politically in the repressed masculine and what I would call the hyper inflated feminine as it relates to the left and the right. Okay, that was where we left off with yesterday's show. If you look on the slideshow that I have here on the show page, this is from the latest Fashion Week that they have every year in New York, which is an occult ritual. It is a dark occult ritual, Fashion Week. It's attended by the spirit diners, Kimi Kardashian, her mom, her transgender stepdad. I'm sure Marina Abramovich is backstage cooking up some nice blood pudding for everybody to feast on. Look at those images. These are the images for men. These are the fashions for men in Fashion Week. I find them to be deplorable, horrific. You know, it's like what the mess. I mean, if you look at these men, they're wearing dresses and they look trashy. They look like whores. Okay, they're like trashy whores. It's terrible. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I'm offending people that want to celebrate the trashy whore look of men in the year of the flaming cock. It's not a good look. I'm sorry. It's just not. And to me, it is symbolic. And I just pulled this off. off the web. It is symbolic of where we are culturally with this completely repressed version of the male. And what's happened is, as a result of this, we have this hyper potentiated version of the feminine. So what do we see on the streets? We see women who are more masculine in many ways than men. If you watch some of the street YouTube videos of women who are screaming bloody murder and violence and by any means necessary, and actually punching, there's videos of women punching men at these protests. They're getting very emboldened, extremely emboldened. And then on that side, you have kind of this cadre of the repressed masculine, also known as cucks, who are supporting this hyper-potentiated feminization of politics. So you have this distended version of the left and the right. And the left, at one point, started off as being a party, as we know, that theoretically cared. We care a lot on the left about workers, about women, about the minorities. We're going to be the secular humanists and the humane and sane representation of what's right, even though we will toss out things like religion and God and all those other things that can be deeply spiritual and very important to people's lives. Unless, of course, the religion happens to be something other than Christianity, in which case, hey, we'll embrace it because it is downtrodden, it is rejected by the majority, in which case we'll take it. So anything that's rejected by the majority, theoretically, became this a fetish for the left in many ways. And so what you have is this melange of kind of new age, heart chakra, feel-goodism sort of politics mixed with the kind of the civil rights movement and workers' rights and things that come out of the 60s. And then you have this kind of new wave of mutation. And that goes along with the whole relationship between gender politics, gender identity, non-binary people, the new cadre. This is the new front wave of the left. And now the definition of the left is anything that has to do with opposing the dominant culture, which in this country for 200 years has been labeled white. That's another part of the left now. That's the new left plank. And by doing so, what's happened is it's incited the left, because now everything that is white is now fascist. And there is no common ground, there is no middle ground, there's no room for dialogue, there's no room for discussion anymore. It is fascist. And now we have an anti-fascist movement in this country, the Antifa, which is very militant. And it is not going away. I will tell you right now, we are going to be dealing with this until the left gets its way and the Atlanta Falcons win the Super Bowl, or the modern social correlation. Now, on the right side, and I'm not giving the right a pass here, because on the right side, what are we doing? Now they're trying to overcompensate for this repressed masculine. They want to go out and start all these wars, which in my view is overcompensation. It's overcompensation with a little voice whispering in Donald Trump's ear, you got to do this. You got to do this because you got elected. Okay, remember your promise. Remember your promise. That's why. That's where we're at right now. But I wanted to read you something. This is very insightful. This is from Camille Paglia, whom I love. And this is actually from an interview by Dr. Susan Berry. This is from 2014. And she talks about masculinity. And it gives you some insight as to how this has all happened. How we got to this place where boys were truncated and morphed into something that is akin to an object of shame in the extreme and diffused persona in the more kind of middle ground of definition. Let me read this. This is fascinating. Now remember, Paglia is an Aries. Keep that in mind. This is what Dr. Susan Berry says. Paglia also remains an enigma to many Americans who are exposed mostly to the utopian feminists in Washington, D.C. She more or less rails against. Talking to her is like a mental CrossFit workout. One moment she's praising pop star Rihanna, then blasting Obamacare, global warming, a religious dogma, and the idea that all gay people are born gay. The biggest canard yet she herself is a lesbian. Weiss observed, however, that the topic that gets the greatest rise out of Paglia is how attempts to dismiss the biological differences between men and women have influenced the collapse of Western civilization. Hence, we have this polarization in this political arena between the left and the right. The entire elite class now in finance, in politics, and so on, this is Paglia, none of them have military service, hardly anyone. There are a few, but there is no prestige attached to it anymore. That is a recipe for disaster, she says. These people don't think in military ways, so there's this illusion out there that people are basically nice, people are basically kind. If we're just nice and benevolent to everyone, they'll be nice too. They literally don't have any sense of evil or criminality. Consequently, cultural decline can be seen everywhere, from dysfunctional Washington to women's fashion in its overemphasis on sexiness. And so this is what Paglia adds here. I believe that every person, male and female, needs to be in a protective mode at all times, alertness to potential danger. The world is full of potential attacks, potential disasters. Paglia disparages the mushiness that has become rampant in American culture beginning as early as kindergarten. Okay, this is the meat of the article. Primary school education is a crock. It's oppressive to anyone with physical energy, especially guys, she says, and observes how difficult it is for boys in schools that have discontinued recess. They're making a toxic environment for boys. Primary education does everything in its power to turn boys into neuters. And I have talked about the last 50 years of public education. Since really the inception of the War on Poverty, LBJ, and the Great Society, education got hijacked. She notes that it only gets worse in colleges and universities. This PC gender politics thing, the way gender is being taught in the universities, in a very anti-male way, it's all about the neutralization of maleness. Masculinity is just becoming something that is limited from, imitated from the movies. There's nothing left. There's no room for anything manly right now. Paglia is not merely feeling sorry for men. The point is that belittling of masculinity is causing women to suffer as well, leaving them to become clones that are destined for Pilates for the next 30 years. Our culture doesn't allow women to know how to be womanly. How about that? Adding that online pornography is increasingly the only place where men and women in our sexist culture can tap into primal energy in a way that they can't in real life. The question, however, is whether American culture can rebound. For Paglia, a big part of the cure is returning to an emphasis on industrial brawn. You see, this is where Trump comes in. Like it or not, he's tapped into this. And what were once traditional male trades, construction, electricity, and plumbing. Michelle Obama is going on. Everybody must have college. Why? Why? What is the reason why everyone has to go to college? Especially when college is so utterly meaningless right now. It has no core curriculum, and people end up saddled with huge debts. I've been talking about this for a long time. Paglia, who believes that the drive for universal college is social snobbery on the part of a lot of upper middle class families who want the sticker in the window. Paglia's ideal feminist role models were women like Amelia Earhart and Katharine Hepburn, who were independent, savvy, and capable of competing with men without emasculating them. I would say Katharine Hepburn was in the business of emasculation. Just watch the movie Adam's Rib, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Still the Amazonian feminist, Paglia remains critical of Steinem, Amy Wolf, and Susan Flutie for brand of feminism that views gender as nothing more than a social construct. Paglia always speaks her mind, always speaks her truth. She's an Aries. Of course, she's going to check in on the side of energy. She's going to check in on the side of bravado, not bravado, energy, confidence, masculinity, direction of will. And this is what's happened with boys and men in our country. And we have this masculinity that has been denied. And the denial of the masculinity has been transferred over to the left. And it is literally like a power that has been given up and sent over to the other side, to the hyperpotentiated feminine on the left. So now what we have is this, it's almost like a shock to the system with where the right is now. It's an overreach to a large extent. And look what happened with Trump. He put three generals into his, we had Kelly, we had Mattis, and who's the other guy? Flynn, Mattis, and there's one more. I forget. But he brought in three generals. So to Paglia's point here, this is symbolic of this kind of reinvestment in the masculine. What does Trump talk about? He talks about jobs. He talks about steel. He talks about, industry. And again, from a symbolic perspective, these are all the things that Paglia is talking about. By the way, she had a very interesting take on Trump. She saw him as a carnival barker. Didn't think he could win the presidency. She was very much behind Bernie Sanders. So if you think that she was clearly in Trump's camp because of her views on men, while she thought him interesting and breaking down the PC barrier, you'd be completely mistaken and wrong. She liked Martin O'Malley, actually, because he was a real kind of radical 60s socialist progressive. Okay, so this brings us to Milo Yiannopoulos, who I believe is the ultimate version of the repressed masculinity in a weird way, right? So what do we have? We've got this guy out there that is just spitting fire. He's taking on the feminists. He hates feminism. He hates political correctness. He's smart as a whip, and yet he's gay. I mean, isn't that fascinating? I mean, this in a lot. So Milo Yiannopoulos has become sort of this new archetypal figure of masculinity, but in an inverted kind of way. Absolutely fascinating. And by the way, I've had some readers and listeners send me some messages about his involvement with Breitbart and perhaps even the Mossad. I would not be at all surprised with that. In fact, he could be, deep state again, controlled opposition again. But as an image, symbol, it is an absolutely fascinating torque around the repressed masculine coming back and being exemplified and personified by Milo Yiannopoulos. It's fascinating. We'll talk more about this tomorrow and get into sort of the deeper ramifications of the left-right polarization and how we can bring this back together, because we're not going to get through this time unless men come back to a place in their lives where they're taking responsibility for their energy, their family, their children, and even the country that they live in. I know it sounds corny, but unless we can get back there and women can begin to relax and embrace some of the values that they've rejected over the last 50 years, we're screwed. We're absolutely screwed. Robert Phoenix, your 15 minutes of flame. Thanks.
The Monopoly Collect to Win game is back at your neighborhood Randall's. Play now for your chance to win $1 million cash, a vacation home, and more, including millions of instant prizes and money-saving offers. Look for products with the Monopoly Collect to Win game tags throughout the store. Score bonus tickets when you buy participating items, and collect game tickets for your chance to win. Shop, play, win at Randall's today. See game rules at playmonopoly.us. Monopoly is a trademark of Hasbro and is used with permission.